Please welcome.
Good morning. And thank you so much, Hugh. First of all, does this work okay? Front, back? Good? Thumbs up? Volume-wise? Good. So first of all, thank you for having me here. Also, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some thoughts, some ideas. My only aspiration would be when you leave this session, if there's one thought, one nugget, one idea that you say, hey, this could actually resonate for me, or that's something I could take with me back to my business, that would be victory for me from this short session this morning. From a process perspective, I'm going to talk for about 15-20 minutes, and then there's a chance for Q&A. And then hopefully for those of you who I'm not connecting with, did not connect with last night, please follow up anyway. I'd like for this to be a kind of a small, close-knit community, and I'm honored to be part of it. So we're going to do three things. The first thing is a bit of context. I want to keep this actually very short because this is not about company commercials. There are very, very prestigious companies represented in this room. So we are just one of many. But I do provide a little bit of context to set the scene for what I'm really going to talk about. This is achieving profitable growth. This is a big deal. We just at Schenker, getting ready for our next 5 years, did a little bit of a math exercise, and this is probably not surprising. In comparison to efficiency gains, profitable growth has, for us, about 3 times as much impact potential. There's only so much you can actually get more efficient and more fine-tuned and sharper and tighter. Profitable growth is where the fun is, and frankly also where 3 times the upside is. So understanding kind of both from a what you do, but also how your mindset has to be geared. Profitable growth is the game to play, and frankly it's much more fun, and it also creates many more professional opportunities for our teammates, taking that lever as priority number 1 versus the efficiency lever. So in terms of a little bit of context, where we're coming from as Schenker, and where the whole growth journey is starting from, we are, roughly speaking, globally a 15 billion euro company. I know there's some representatives of companies in the room that dwarf our size, but in our space, we are one of the larger players. About 130,000 teammates globally, and we operate in 65,000 teammates globally in 130 countries. And if you look at the globe, one thing we have not fully figured out yet is to be somewhat equally balanced in the triad, where we have kind of 3 strong major regions between Americas, Europe, and APAC, and then a developing emerging region. We're still very much, if you look at the center here, 68%, we're still very much heavily biased towards Europe. Part of that is frankly a part of history. We started 144 years ago with horses and buggies in Vienna, Austria. So that's still our base, and we do need to get more balance between the parts of the globe. In terms of the businesses, what we look to do is shaping our business partners' supply chains, helping them advance their business. And we do this obviously by moving things and by holding things and adding value to them. So if you look at the lines of business, there's the kind of more mature, slower growth land business that you're probably very familiar with if you're based here in Europe. Then there's obviously air and ocean, freight forwarding. They're a little bit higher growth businesses, between 3 and 4% respectively. And then the fastest growing market for all of us in these lines of business is the contract logistics part. Personally at Schenker, I'm responsible for the contract logistics part globally. That's about 20,000 teammates. And I'm also responsible for driving growth across all of the businesses, so for the entire company, Schenker. So let's go double-click. This sets the scene for what I'm talking about when I talk about profitable growth, which is the contract logistics part, which I'm going to use as an example. If you look at the left-hand side here, so we're not the largest in the world in our business. There's other companies that are 5 times the size, one specifically, or a little bit larger in other cases. We're number 5 size-wise of the global ones. Now, one thing actually that is the case, of the large contract logistics businesses, we are the fastest growing, and we're also, this is not exactly software money, but we also, if you look at EBIT margin, we're also the most profitable of the large ones. So you might ask yourself, at least I did when I joined about 16 months ago, why is that? Like, why is this machine actually coming reasonably well? And then if you look at these pictures, and you look at the top 3 pictures, they give you an idea. What we achieved to do as a company is hook up and partner with the best companies in their respective industries. So the logos in the middle up there, our largest customers are Apple, Procter & Gamble, BMW, Samsung, Intel, Cisco. So we actually figured out a way, and this is the team over the last 8 to 10 years, to add value and then frankly capture a small slice of that value by doing pretty cool things in some cases for some of the best companies in their respective industries, which actually also, if you can crack the code with them, helps you also crack the code with some of the other companies in those industries. So the 3 pictures that you see around those logos is me walking around. My wife's Canadian, so I'm still owning 2 BlackBerries. That will be the last holdout until they finally give up playing in the marketplace. But so I'm walking around our own facilities with my BlackBerry and take some of these pictures. The top left-hand side is actually here in Holland for a smartphone maker. And when you go into this type of facility where we test and repair, it looks more like a high-tech campus. Because again, what we looked to figure out is not only to hold things, like put things onto pallets, put the pallets onto shelves for 2 months, they collect dust, and then at some point they go out again. Because you and my brother could rent a truck in an empty building and do the same thing, we could do it for less. So what we look to figure out is like, how can we actually add value for these types of companies, whether it's getting all the parts in, either from the end consumer or as they actually go to the end consumer, and then add value to them, like repairing smartphones, like putting gift baskets together for a chocolate maker, like putting a light assembly in place for some of the automakers. And in case you want to have your spouse's name stitched into the dashboard, we can do that too, because we have already the final order details. So again, looking to actually add value for some of the leading companies in their respective industries and making sure we actually get them also capture a slice of that value. The second thing is when you look at the pictures like this pile of sand or this thing called DWC. DWC is Dubai World Central. When you fly into Dubai today, one of the first things you see in the airport, Dubai International, is actually a sign that says Dubai International, second most international departures globally. And then when I went there the first time, I walked through that, I saw that sign, I thought, wow, I didn't expect that. Well, then it dawned on me, well, every single departure is obviously an international departure, so it's borderline cheating, but it's a factually correct statement. If you go 30 kilometers down the road from Dubai International, they are currently building the largest airport in the world. Dubai World Central, this is the agency building it. Al Maktoum, 5 runways, A380. And what we're doing here is we actually are hooking up with the agency, Dubai World Central, to actually make sure that we work with them so as they get to some of the companies, global companies, to co-locate or locate there for distribution in the Middle East, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, that we get to partner with them. So it's kind of looking around the corner geographically, or the pile of sand is a big, well, not today, but in a few years, a big distribution center for Elsewedy, one of the global challengers in the most recent Boston Consulting Group study, a company that will be a big deal a few years from now. So the main part that I'm looking to get across here is, yes, we can work with the best companies in their respective spaces today. It's equally important to look around the corner, kind of what's next. What's next geographically, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Egypt, Egypt is a country of 80 plus million people, size of Germany from a population perspective. Well educated, very well located. As and if and when they get their act together in terms of social circumstances, this can be a booming market for that entire region and beyond. And then the second thing is, as we look beyond current practice into next practice, not only doing this geographically, but also when you look at the picture on the top, on the middle right-hand side, also looking around the corner, the way you do things. When I say the way we do things, this is a picture of that red thing is a Swiss log robot. We opened up about almost a year ago a large facility in Stockholm, Sweden, which is fully automated picking. So what happens is actually, as there are on peak days before Christmas, 50,000 orders coming in for toys, the lady or gentleman at the table stands and just pushes for the next order. The next order might be a puzzle and Lego set, and then these robots, 60 of them, are running around taking the shelves to the packing table. It just gets taken out of the shelf, and then it gets actually on a conveyor belt, automatically wrapped, and then after a weight check it goes out or it goes back if the pieces had been picked incorrectly. Efficiency gains of 60% and error rate going down by 90% versus manual picking. So the main point here is what do you actually do to achieve profitable growth content-wise? There's really three basic lessons, and again, no matter which business we are in, this is not rocket science, right? The first thing that I just talked about is you actually partner up with the most challenging, demanding companies in their respective areas, because they keep you sharp, they make you sharp, they make you more precise, and again, if you can crack the code with those companies, you probably can also crack the code with many others. The second thing is you always look around the future geographically. I was on the board of a large chemicals distribution company, Univar, for 5 years, and we were active in the Americas, in Europe. And I said, like, why are we not going where manufacturing and consumption is going to be versus where it is and where it was? In 2 years, we made 8 acquisitions in Asia and South America primarily. And the last point, and by the way, when you talk about going to the markets of the future, again, somewhat perhaps self-critically, some of you, when I look at these markets that I listed here, have figured this out way before we at DB Schenker did. And we have some catch-up work to do in some cases to really look around the corner geographically, because some of you have done this before we did. And the third piece I just talked about is obviously not just looking to next practice geographically, but also looking to next practice from an innovation approach, like what it is we do. Whether it's Internet of Things, 3D printing, whether it's full automation, the warehouse of the future. Again, in some of these cases, you can also partner up with some of your most demanding, challenging customers to get you there faster. So this is a bit about what to do. The next thing I want to focus the rest of my time on is the mindset with which you do these types of things to achieve profitable growth. This is the what. Let's talk about the what, the how, and let's start with the how, with a perspective of perhaps how not to do it. So this is from the great business philosopher Dilbert. If you just take a short read of this lesson of perhaps how not to do things. Standing in front of it. So the basic proposition is, I actually thought it was funny when I saw it. I hope it resonates somewhat. This is the type of thing, how do you achieve kind of short-term job security? You achieve short-term job security by hiring someone who's exactly like you yourself, just a bit dumber. Right? That gets you probably a safe job for the next 6 to 18 months, because that person will not overtake you. At the same time, obviously long-term, that's not the way it works. You have to get sharper by surrounding yourself with people who are in dimensions that matter better than you are. So this is not how not to do it. Let me give you a little bit of context of what my personal observations are. And again, this sometimes works for me, and I hope it sometimes also, there may be one or two things in there that resonate for you. So, Hugh, you mentioned before that I got a chance about 9 years ago with a friend of mine to actually write a book. I never had the dream or aspiration to write a book, but I was somewhat coerced into it. I was born and raised, as you can probably tell by my accent, in Germany. We in Germany, we tend to be, this is somewhat perhaps unfairly generalizing, we tend to be very left-brain people for the most part. Left brain means highly linear, highly analytical, somewhat nerdy, perhaps somewhat boring, but very left-brainy. So that's certainly true for myself. I grew up on the left brain side, kind of heavily leaning on the analytical side. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we all have two halves of our brain for a reason. The right-hand side of our brains is more about passion. It's perhaps about the long and winding road to get from A to B. But you actually pick up stuff that is complementary to what you have on the left-hand side. Once I figured out that I'm somewhat only 50% of, in terms of usage of my brain by being so heavily left-sided, I, over the last 10, 15 years actually, surrounded myself somewhat on purpose with quite a few people who are much more at home on the right-hand side. One of my best friends is the founder of Ballet Memphis. She couldn't figure out the most linear straight line from A to B if you gave her 10 chances. But she figures out a way to actually get people's passion into what they do. And so there's a purpose for both halves of the brain. The proposition in that book was actually, if you can find a way to actually make the left-hand side of your brain come alive and the right-hand side of your brain come alive, you probably will get better results and you'll have also more fun while you're at it. So what I want to do is with perhaps a sentence or two each, just walk you through some of the simple ideas that I like to use with my teams on the left-hand side of the brain, some of the simple ideas that I also learned to use more that come from the right-hand side of my brain. And again, my only expectation or aspiration here would be, if there's something in that you say, like, that's actually a good way of looking at this, I might try that as well. The first part is the work smarter, not harder part. The question that I like to ask, and frankly I also like my teammates to ask, is what would have to be true? So for instance, I talked about emerging markets, I talked about Dubai. I'm looking with envy at many of you who entered this market much earlier than we did, much more aggressively than we did. So we had a business plan for next year where we said, like, let's invest 20 or 30% more CapEx. So the question I asked my leader for that region is, what would have to be true for you to rightfully spend 10 times as much CapEx next year as you did this year? What would have to be true for you to spend 10 times as much CapEx? If you ask the question that way, what would have to be true for us to double revenue in 3 years? What would have to be true for there to be 0 wrong checks going out? It's a very different mindset that you actually instill than if you ask the question, how can we get 10% better, or how can we cut the error rate by 3%? What would have to be true to grow 10x? What would have to be true to have 0 mistakes? The people skills part, one of the many things I learned at FedEx where I was 12 years was whenever we had tough decisions to make, the simple question that our founder and CEO at FedEx, Fred Schmitt, made us ask is, what's the right thing to do by our people? What's the right thing to do by our people? That's the guiding question. People, service, profit in that sequence. You take care of your own people, who then in turn will give outstanding service, with profit being almost a logical consequence. People, service, profit in that sequence. Putting people first does not mean if somebody screws up the fourth time, makes the same mistake, then you say it's all fine, it's okay. It's not okay. You stretch them, you challenge them. You also look at their will and skill, and you put them in charge of a certain objective, and then you make sure, skill-wise and will-wise, you support them appropriately, whether it's cheerleading, whether it's rolling up your sleeves. For every one of my direct reports, when I put their NBOs in place, I always figure out will-wise and skill-wise, how are they positioned to be successful with that NBO? What do I need to be doing, whether it's cheerleading or teaching them skills, to make sure that they actually are in the high will, high skill place, ultimately in relation to that goal. Putting people first means taking care of them, stretching and growing and making them successful. It doesn't mean just cuddling them and saying, it's okay if you make a mistake the fifth time. I think one big team, the moment I catch myself at the end of a project saying, oh, we need to run this by finance, or we need to run this by legal, I screwed up. We have to get all the right players at the table at the beginning. If you have any type of project, medium-sized, small, large, get the team at the table early on. When you talk about running something by someone at the end of a project, chances are it's not going to go anywhere. Time management. One thing that I did when I was at FedEx, I ran the global sales planning function. So we supported all the business units. So I actually had my, this was an 800 people team at the time, I had them fill out timesheets. There was a lot of noise about this, like, is Tom now Big Brother watching us, and whether I work my 8 hours or so. No, what I wanted to do is, if I had 3 objectives, if my number 1 objective for the year as a sales planning division was to grow international sales, I wanted to get a sense how much of our collective energy and time is going towards international sales versus other categories. So it's, I think, quite educational, quite instructive if you, from time to time, step back and actually look at, or have your assistant together with you look at, how do you actually spend your time, and how does this actually, that pie chart, how does that actually relate to what your objectives for the year are? If you have an objective that's your number 1 objective that makes up 40% of your NBOs, and you spend 3% of your time on it, chances are you screwed up. Don't sacrifice good for better. All of us, frankly, when we look for the best answer, we have debates, going back and forth, as best answer wins. But all of us are typically in a high speed, high number of transaction business. We're not in a philosophy club. Most of the time, you know the answer directionally fairly quickly. Once you know the directional answer, it's time to move. There's always, people like to always be devil's advocate, have a second and third opinion, and we are not in the business of being debate clubs or philosophy clubs. So once you know the answer directionally, you move. On the right-hand side, just some observations of things that I picked up and I try to cherish and try to actually leverage that are more from the right-hand side of my brain. The first one is be ambitious for the cause and for your people. And that's actually a tough one to learn. So when I was a young McKinsey associate after business school, I wanted to become the engagement manager of a project the fastest possible way, the quickest possible way. And I wanted to be so badly an engagement manager of a project, so I made it very well known within the firm. I wanted to run a project, not just be an associate on the project. Well, they tried to keep me and placate me, so I became a project manager very early on. But it was the leper colony of the project. The worst client, the surroundings, the context, the project, nothing was good. I didn't learn anything. I also didn't really stretch myself. So yes, I was ambitious for myself. It didn't get me anywhere. Whenever I find ways to be ambitious for my team, for the cause that we're actually looking to actually be successful at, that's when we win. And frankly, I've also found out, if you're truly ambitious for your people and for your cause, it will come back to you 1,000 times.